What's up, everyone? Welcome to a new tutorial. I had a ton of you ask me how I created this heart effect right here, and I'm going to jump into that in today's video. Fair warning, it is not easy, and we need to use After Effects. It seems simple, but it really isn't, and let's not waste any more time because this is going to take quite a bit. As always, I give away one free version of my Ultimate Effects Pack. Just click the link in the description down below if you want to enter for the giveaway. I will announce the winner on Tuesday. Open up After Effects and create a new composition. Let's just make this composition 10 seconds. We're just going to keep it at comp 1 and click OK. Now that we have our composition, all you have to do is drag your videos in. So we have our light video right here, and then we have the heart video that we'd like to transition into. Match those clips up. I'm going to adjust the first clip to right about there, drag the ending to there, and then I'm going to drag my heart clip just like that at the end. All right, so now I'm going to transition into these clips. I'm going to create the particle around the heart. Now, this is going to be very complex because you actually have to create the line stroke, the particle stroke, and the line stroke on this side and the particle stroke on this side. So it will take quite a bit of time, but I'm going to try to crunch through this as fast as I can. Let's create the particle generator. Right-click down here and click New Solid. Once you create New Solid, let's name this Particle Left, because this is going to be dealing with the heart around there. And the next step is to go to the Effects and Presets tab and type in CC Particle World. Drag on CC Particle World to the particle left, and let's start manipulating it. Go up here into the Effects Controls area and uncheck Position, Radius, Motion Path, Grid, Horizon, and Axis box, or Axes box, whatever you want. Keep the birth rate and longevity for now. Let's open up Physics and change the velocity to 0, the gravity to 0, and the extra to 0 as well. We're going to change this later. Now let's go into particle and change particle type to faded sphere. And now we're going to manipulate this stuff later, but we can keep it all for the time being. What we have to do is we have to basically track this particle to a stroke and then animate it so that it looks like it's actually getting thrown around it. It's pretty complex. So the next step is to right-click down here and go to New Null Object. Now we're gonna click Enter on this null and name it Null Left so we can easily keep track of it. We're gonna make sure our playhead is right on the clip that we're transitioning into, since this is kind of the heart that we wanna make. So we're gonna click on the Null Left, go up here to the top area and click on the pen tool or select G. And what we're gonna do is start from the bottom, and you're gonna click a point, and then you're gonna go somewhere up in the middle of the heart, click and drag, because when you drag, it will create a Bezier. Now we're going to create a couple points, making sure that we drag along all of this heart so that we can get a nice Bezier curve that matches our heart pretty dang good. And then once you're done, all you have to do is click the final point and do nothing else. So now what we want to do is click on our Null Left and select M, and that will bring up the mask path. So we're going to click on mask path and hit Control C or Command C on a Mac, and that will copy the mask path. Now we can delete the mask path by selecting the delete key, and then we're going to hit P on Null Left. That will bring up the position area. Now we want to click Position and hit Control V to paste that mask layer onto the position. What that does is it will basically animate that mask onto that position layer. You'll notice that it didn't transfer over exactly how we wanted it, so all you have to do is click on each individual node and adjust them to the heart. Now that it's adjusted to the heart, you can see that our animation is following along the path. What we want to do is actually highlight all of those position keyframes and select F9. Once you select F9, click on this button right here. That'll bring up the graph editor. Make sure you hit V on your keyboard. That'll bring up the selection tool. Click down here and drag this yellow line to the right. We want to basically start this animation a little bit slower, slow, and then go really fast at the end. And I also like to click on the end speed graph and drag that to the right a tiny bit as well. All right, so that is done with the speed graph. And now check this out. If we drag our position keyframes around, it'll automatically retime the animation. So we're gonna highlight everything and drag these so the end is about at the point right here. And what this does is it'll animate on our first clip and then pop right into this clip. Now I want it so that when this is coming up right there, I want to transition into the next clip. So I'm going to make sure everything is selected and then adjust this, pops right into that corner, and then we jump into the next frame just like that. All you have to do is move your position keyframes around. So now we have this set. Now, how do we link the particle system to this heart? Well, let's click on particle left and go click the down arrow, go to effects, go to CC particle world, and go to producer. Now, we basically have to animate the X and Y values to match the position of our null. But check this out. Whenever we move this around, what's happening? Well, look at these numbers. They don't make any sense because they don't match the position numbers. It's not actually the width of the composition and the height of the composition. It's some arbitrary number that CC particle world uses. So we actually have to write an expression for X and Y to link that to our position. So bring your particle back to the center, and we're going to hold Alt and select the position X. Once you do that, that will open up the expressions window, and all you want to do right away is click on this pick whip next to position X and drag this up to our null left position. Once you do that, we're going to go back to the beginning of this expression and type in X equals. Basically, we're trying to make X the position X value of our null left. And that's denoted in the transform position 0, because if you look at this, position X is 0 and position Y is 1. We're going to get into that later. At the end of this phrase, we need to write minus thisComp.width, which is the entire width of this comp, and divide it by 2. Hit a colon at the end. This will create a value of 0 since it's subtracting the full width of the composition. And now we're going to click enter, and then we're also going to type in X divided by thisComp.width, and then just click enter. Now, if you don't want to write this expression, I will link it in the description down below. Now, all we have to do is copy this full thing and hold Alt and select position Y. Once you select position Y, let's click paste by hitting Control V or Command V on a Mac, and let's change these values. Let's change X to Y, and then X to Y down here. And then also up here in the top, we also have to change the transform position 0 to transform position 1, since we want it to read the Y value now, which is on the right side. We also want to zero out the height instead. So change width to height at the very end, and then you don't have to adjust the width down here. And then just click away. Now, if you look at our composition, our particle layer is actually mapped to our null layer, just like so. But now let's start animating our particle layer. Let's scrub through so there's a little bit of motion right here, because I want my particle to actually fly away from this heart to actually show you that it's following it. So we're going to click on our particle layer. So first things first, let's change the birth rate a little bit and lower that down to, let's say, about 0.4. And then let's make the longevity 0.65. So that looks good, scrubbing through there. And now we have to make it so that the particles fly away as it's going around the corner. And that's going to be in velocity. So I'm going to drag my velocity up a tiny bit, and it's still not looking good. So what we actually have to do is add inherent velocity. So if we drag inherent velocity to the left, probably about to -75, you'll see that as soon as it rounds this corner, those particles will actually fly away, just like so. Now, I don't like the size of these particles. So what I'm going to do is change the birth size by dragging it down a little bit. And then I want to make the death size 0. And I'm going to increase my birth size a little bit more. So that looks good. And then all we have to do is change the color of the particles now. So we're going to change the birth color to red and the death color to red as well. If you notice that it's pretty sparse, you can actually increase the birth rate. That'll add more particles in there. And you can constantly play around with all of the velocity effects to condense it down a little bit more to really get an effect that you want. Once we have that done, all we have to do is go to the beginning, and we don't want this particle spooling up right here until it starts to move. So once it starts to move, I'm actually going to go to the birth rate and select the keyframe and drag this all the way to 0. And then I'm going to scrub forward till I get about halfway up the heart and drag your birth rate up to something that you like, which I think 0.5 looks good. And if you play back through this, you'll see that there's nothing. It starts to create the particles just like so, and then the particles fly away as we transition into this clip right here. Once you transition into that clip, we want to add another keyframe on the birth rate by selecting this button down here, and then scrub forward a little bit and make the birth rate 0. So this way, our particle will start around the heart and then disappear up here at the top when we transition into our next clip. While that was awesome, you're gonna have to do that exact same process for the other side. I'm not gonna go through that in this tutorial, but just know that this is exactly what you're gonna have to do. So now we have to actually create the stroke to go along the path. So since we got the hard part out of the way, let's do the easy part. We're gonna go right here towards the end, and we're gonna go right-click, New, Shape Layer. On this shape layer, we're gonna drag it to the top, and we're going to name this Left Heart Stroke Layer. Select on the left heart stroke layer, and the same process, we're going to select the pen tool up here, and we're gonna click fill and make sure there is no fill. Select stroke and make sure it is red, and let's change this to, let's say 25, just so we can see what we're working with. We're gonna select a point down here and start dragging around our heart. Remember, if you select and hold, you can create a bezier. And just try to get this as close as you can to your heart, and then finish it off at the bottom right there. Again, you can click on these and adjust them as needed. Click this arrow and go into our shape layer and select add, and then go to trim paths. Open up trim paths, and you'll notice that if we change the end percentage, we can start to create this stroke. So what we wanna do is we wanna match our stroke speed to the particle speed. So let's go to the beginning over here and watch what's going on. So I noticed that we started right about there. You wanna find the point where your null layer starts to move, and then create a keyframe on the end of our trim paths of our shape layer and make sure it's at 0%. And then we wanna scroll all the way to the end where it matches the ending of the null layer, and drag our end to 100%. You'll notice right away if we play back through this, it doesn't match because we have to change the speed. So what we wanna do is highlight both of those ending keyframes and hit F9. Once you do that, let's go back into this graph editor, and the same process like before, hit V on your keyboard to bring up the selection tool, select our first keyframe and drag it to the right, and then drag our back keyframe to the right a little bit, and let's scrub through here and see what's going on. All right, the particles are matching, they're matching, and it's coming up, and then as it goes down, I'm pretty happy with that. It looks pretty good, but now we gotta adjust this stroke layer, because that stroke layer looks like crap. So what we wanna do is go out of the graph editor, go into our shape layer, and go to stroke, and then let's change the line cap from butt cap to round cap. That'll round it out a little bit. And then we also want to go to the effects and preset and type in compound. We're gonna drag on compound blur to our stroke layer. Then we're going to select invert blur, because that'll give it a nice little glow, and change the maximum blur to whatever you think looks good. I think something like 13 looks pretty good for me. And then let's play back through this. All right, so then once that stroke finishes right up here, we're going to basically change the stroke opacity by selecting a keyframe from 100% and then scrub forward a couple frames and make it 0%. So we want to get rid of that stroke. And also you can do it in the beginning when the stroke starts. Let's create another opacity keyframe by selecting this thing over here and changing it to 0, and then scrub forward a little bit where it starts to go and make the opacity 100%. So now our heart will start to fade in and be drawn just like that. You can adjust the beginning opacity if you want it to be more subtle when it comes in, just like that. Awesome. So that is how we created the heart transition in the Buckeye-thon video. Now keep in mind, you still have to do the entire other side. So you can kind of see how long this will take. If you have any questions, let me know down below and I will try to answer them. This is a pretty complex tutorial, but I think once you understand it, it's not too bad. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. It was pretty hard to remember how we created that effect, but I think you might have learned something. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think down below. And if you're new, consider subscribing because I'm going to be making some more stuff in the future. I'll see you next time. You know what? Normally I close this out with some audio, but this time I'm not. If you're still watching, type Team Trees down below. Then I'll know you stuck around till the end. You're a true fan. Thanks. What are you doing? Leave.